then we forget that God is the one that made all this happen. And then we find ourselves when the drought situation comes in, storm situation comes in, and we can't get to this place of abundance where we were. Our backs are against the wall. Then we cry out to God with all our might. And Daniel, what we see from Daniel is not someone who cried out to God only in need. He was, even when he was large and in charge, he was still faithful. It didn't matter what the laws of the land said as far as what he was concerned, that we're only supposed to pray to this person. He still did his prayers to God and did them boldly and in the open. That's something that we don't see a lot in the people who are or call themselves believers of God. We tend to shy away from being labeled Christians. We don't want people to know or feel funny because around us, we want them to be able to be who they are, act how they are. Now, y'all go ahead and drink, and y'all go ahead and do all this. You can curse and do everything you want to do. Don't worry about me. I'm still cool. Well, and the fact of the matter is that we're not supposed to still be cool. I mean, the Bible does not, at any point in the Bible does it say, my children are to be cool. He said that we are supposed to be a royal priesthood, that we were set apart for a purpose. And part of that purpose means that when people are doing things that distract them from God, that we are to keep the same kind of focus on God that has nothing to do with the world, that we shun the world and cling to him. But oftentimes it's just the opposite. We cling to everything else and give God the scraps until we actually meet him and have no other place to go except to him. So what we find is the Daniel is part of the Israelite captivity taken. The Israelite captivity taken to Babylon. Daniel, as a prophet, had lived in Babylon for a lot of years. He was there for several kings, and we notably see in the first chapter that it was King Nebuchadnezzar who was in charge when they first got there. He was the one that set him apart because they realized when we read the scripture. Matter of fact, let's go to Daniel chapter 1. Hold on, I'm getting ready to share my screen with y'all so we can get this up here. All right, we got Daniel chapter 1, and we start reading at verse 1. It says, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. So let's just stop there. Let's just put a little pin in it. So here we have the king of Judah at that time. And we know that Israel was divided into two kingdoms at this time. And so Daniel was clearly from Judah, and their king Jehoiakim was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar. But here's the key. He comes in there and he takes the articles of the house of God, our God, and then he takes them to the treasure house of his God. I mean, this is rhetorical. Here's a man who doesn't believe in the Almighty God, Elohim, Jehovah, Yahweh. He doesn't believe him, but he's taking all the things that were in the temple and takes them to his city, to a treasure house of his God, almost as if he has taken this as a conquering king and offering this up as a sacrifice to his God. And if you look at it, typically the way it's written in the Bible, when they talk about our God, it's a capital G, and any other God, it's a little g. Okay, then in verse 3, it says, then the king instructed Aphanaz, the master of his eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles. Now he's taking the royal family. He said some of the children, of Israel, some of the king's family and nobles, royal people, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had the ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them for a daily provision of the king's delicacies, of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of the time they might serve before the king. Now, from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave the name. He gave Daniel the name of Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, he gave Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. Or as Richard Pryor said many years ago, a big Negro. But, that's for those who like Richard Pryor. Anyway, my wife gave that head roll. So we just deal with this little section here. So King Nebuchadnezzar comes in and conquers Judah, and he takes on the young children, some of the nobles, some of the descendants of the king, but he has specific requirements. Young men in whom there was no blemish. Now, Daniel is a book of prophecy. We're going to get, as we get into the later chapters, we're going to see more of the prophetic nature of what Daniel is prophesizes. But here, right off the bat, there is this idea of prophecy, some prophecy being fulfilled and prophecy that will come to pass. Young men in whom there was no blemish. This is something that's very similar that we see in the Exodus, when the children of Israel, before the Passover happened, they were supposed to take a young lamb that which there was no blemish, and the blood of that lamb was then to be spread on the doorpost, so that the angel of death would pass over and know that there was that this house was covered in the blood. We understand that as far as Jesus Christ was concerned, he was a man without blemish, and the blemish was that he had no blemish on his soul. So we see that this idea of having blameless and pure people in service is something that runs through this. Why do you think it was necessary? Again, no right answer here, for the king to want unblemished young men.
Well, if they were unblemished and they were pure, they were clean, they were good, considered good, and they were better.
It's just kind of interesting that he makes this request: young men in whom there was no blemish, and then also says good looking. So you want some handsome brothers up there working for him. You don't want some mud dog. You don't want Stanley up there dealing with him. He want unblemished, good looking young men. Then goes on to say gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand. So you don't want a good looking dummy. That's a good looking smart dude. Possessing knowledge, quick to understand, and then have the ability to serve in the king's palace. Because, we come across these people that can fit that description. They may be young, they may be good looking, but they're as dense as a brick. And all they're good for is for their looks. And this is what this king is saying. I don't want all of this. I want these young, attractive, learned people. Now, we know from a manipulation standpoint, the idea with young, attractive people, if they're working for the king, then people are going to more apt to listen if he's got these young, good-looking dudes talking, because they're smart. As he said, they have to be gifted in knowledge, gifted in wisdom, possessing knowledge. And realistically, when he's talking about people who are gifted in knowledge, these are people who know how to persuade others to either do a certain task or to think a certain way. Well, see, here's the part of where we look at the prophetic nature of the book of Daniel. This is a playbook out of every politician's play. This is a play right out of every politician's playbook, to get people around them that they believe are going to influence others. Where I am lacking, you should have strength that I can use you to help me get this message across. So I'm, I don't want to go this direction, but it's fitting because we're dealing with our current administration. His whole campaign was, I'm going to bring the best and the brightest with me. That was supposed to be a selling point. He's essentially saying, I'm bringing young, good-looking people that are gifted in wisdom and possessing knowledge that are going to be able to help me carry out the mission that I have for this nation. And this is what King Nebuchadnezzar was attempting to do. And then he said, so he wants these people because I want them to understand our language and our literature. I want to get them indoctrinated to our culture, our way of living, our way of thinking. And he knows that if he's got these dudes who are up here in this place, he is more apt to get people to follow him and acquiesce to the new way of doing it, let go of everything they knew from Judah and accept the new way of the Babylonians. Learn our language, learn our culture, learn our literature. And as a reward, it said, and the king appointed them for a daily provision of not just food, but his delicacies. His delicacies, wine, my wine, not just any old wine, said, but the wine he drank. So he's already creating this a reward system for them, which you could imagine that if you are young and impressionable and you meet these qualifications, that I get to eat what the king eats, I get to drink what the king drink. You might be very quick to get his message out. As my wife said, conform to his way of thinking and do exactly what he does. I mean, here again, in the US, not just now, but every president, you have people who do the bidding of the president. And whether you like the president or dislike the president, whoever the president is at the time, there are always people who will they will be the one to fall on the sword for that guy. And this is the mentality, what he's trying to do with these people. I'm rewarding you to do what I need you to do by giving you the food that I eat and the wine that I drink. Everything that I have, I'm giving to you. But what is the larger picture of that? Everything I have, I'm giving to you.
To make them more obedient to him.
Okay, that's good. My wife said manipulation. That's good too. But think about this: King Nebuchadnezzar is no fool, right? I mean, he had to be a halfway learned kind of person because he was able to conquer Judah, and he knew what he needed to get people to do what he wanted them to do by getting this select group of people. These are the type of people who I want you to have in my cabinet. He knows what Judah represented for the Hebrews. He knew what their land was. He knew what their culture was. So in a sense, he's trying to replace God in their lives. I'm giving you what I got. Everything I have, I'm going to give to you. You get to eat what I eat. You get to drink what I drink. And I'm going to train you. You're going to get the best education for 3 years that you don't have to pay nothing back. But I'm going to train you so now you can go out and you can get everybody else on the same page working for our program. This is just this classic. We see this all the time, that even in today's military, when they go in and conquer or take over a territory, they find the people who are of an influence to get them on their side, because once they get them on their side, they're the ones who are going to influence the rest of the people, as they say, to win the hearts and minds of the people. And so if he comes off as God to Daniel, Azariah, Mishael, and Azariah, then he's going to appear as God to them. Because if you read all the way through Daniel, through Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he likened himself to God. He wanted to be God. He thought he was bigger and better than God. So he is trying to replace their God, the God Jehovah, the God Yahweh, with him that I'm the benevolent, merciful one who is going to give you the best of the best of everything. And this is what you have to do for me. Now, where for us in this day and age, where is the warning for us?
You said, where's the warning?
Yeah.
What do you mean the warning, Pastor? Like,
Well, let's see. If we just right here, we don't know anything else about Daniel and his boys. We do know that the king is offering stuff for us that we are not necessarily used to. And if we are the learned people he believes we are, because that's what he selected them for, gifted in wisdom, possessing knowledge, that we would know he's trying to manipulate us, right?
Mm-hmm.
right?
So
Right.
the lesson we have to get today as Christians is that we don't fall for the okie doke either when we have leaders who are promising things for us that they cannot do or deliver. Mm-hmm. Or give us, or try to persuade us to believe and act in a certain way because they give us material things, when we know that we serve a God who is greater than all of this. What we know about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we're going to get to this in the next section, they were not going to, or I take that back. Before we even started, the word that we used to describe Daniel, what could we say that was key about Daniel was faithfulness. Mm-hmm. Not willing to turn his back on his God for the God Nebuchadnezzar. He was not willing to turn his back on God for the things of this world. He was not willing to turn his back on God for anything other than to serve God himself. That's the lesson for us right off the bat. We could almost stop and never even deal anymore with this book if we just get in our minds right off the bat that we are never to sell out God for anything. Mm-hmm. Just this right where they are, they have already been captured. You know, the war has taken place. They have been captured. They are in exile from their home, exile from their land, forced to do a job that does not jive with their faith and where they've been brought up. But Daniel is still faithful to say, I'm not giving up who I am and what I am for none of this stuff that you have to give me, because it is not as good as you think it is. So let's go to verse 11 here. It says, so let me go back. I'm sorry, I went too far. Verse 8, it says, so we just know what the new names that the eunuch gave. We had Daniel, we had Hananiah, we had Mishael, and had Azariah. And it says, but verse 8, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine he drank. Therefore, he requested to the chief eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now, God had brought Daniel into favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. So he comes to the chief cook, the chef, but it says God had given him favor with all the eunuchs and the cooks. But why would Daniel purpose in his heart? Why would he believe that this food and wine would defile him?
Because it wasn't what God had for him.
Right on the money. And we also look at this. Yes. Daniel says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies. So you ever know, whether you see it in a movie or a TV drama or see it play out in real life, these people who will sell their soul for a little notoriety, mm-hmm. or a little fame. Just, I mean, the YouTube is famous. People get, what do they call them? These young people, they call it, they're social influencers or whatever. They will do anything to get likes and followers and subscribers, because the more people sign up for their stupidness, the more money they make.
Mhm.
They're defiling themselves for the king's delicacies, the world's delicacies. When we think about it in context of where we are as human beings, at this idea, how are we? Why do we continue to defile ourselves with the delicacies of the world instead of remaining true to God? My wife just said, feeding the flesh.
Yes, I was going to agree. Yeah, we get weak for the flesh because we have the people in front of us, and we have to deal with them day to day. So we want to please them at times. So unfortunately, we fall short on our faith to please them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't it interesting that Daniel knew that, even though, I mean, if you look at it in the context of where he is and where they were, why would anybody want to turn down the king's delicacies for anything else? I mean, at this point, this is the best food and the best wine. I mean, it's if you guys remember one of the sermons I preached, talking about the new wine, you want that Lafitte wine. Why would you be drinking Stella Rosa when you can have not Petite Lafitte, but the Lafitte Bordeaux? That was what it was, a Lafitte Bordeaux. A $20,000 bottle of wine versus a $10 bottle of wine, right?
Mm.
I mean, this is what the king is coming with the Petite Bordeaux, and he's saying, no, I'll just take some water and some herbs and vegetables. That's all we want to eat. And you see, the chief is like, no, because see, this is good food we got for you. And if I don't feed you this, you're going to look downtrodden. You won't look as healthy as the other men your age, and then that'll be my butt. He recognized that his butt was on the line. But Daniel said, I get you, but this is what I need. I need to not take on all of this of the world. Now, he already knows that there's a certain aspect of his life that he is not going to be able to shed. He's in a position, he's in a situation where he's not going to be able to reject everything. This is just one small part of his life that he's going to be able to reject. And he chooses to reject that. But do we reject the world or any part of the world in our daily life, or do we take it all because that's what we should do because everybody else does it and that's what everybody expects us to do?
We pick and choose.
Yeah. Oh, in some cases, we don't even pick and choose. We just dive head first into the deep end of the pool, taking everything the world has because everybody else is doing it. Why shouldn't I be getting a piece of the pie? Yeah, my wife said, we conform to the ways of the world.
We're weak.
Very weak. And so here again, this lesson that Daniel is giving us right in the first few verses of this chapter of being faithful, that sometimes you can be in a situation where you may not have complete control of everything, but there are certain aspects of which you do have a control over, then you need to exercise control over those things. We can't control where we were born. You can control where you work. In some cases, I mean, it might be the only job available, but while you're at that job, you can't control how you perform at that job, not fall under the influence of what other people are doing, or you watched other people get away with stuff. So if they can get away with it, I'm going to get away with it too. That we have a way to conform that we don't have to watch the same things that everybody else watches. People are every day, you'll find that people will watch certain things on TV because everybody keeps talking about how good this show is. And it's trash. To this day, I don't know why anybody watches, and this is just my opinion, I don't know why anybody watches any of the Housewives show. There is no value at all in the Real Housewives.
I agree,
And
Pastor.
most of them are not even married anymore, right?
Right.
Whether it's a basketball wife or a football wife or the Real Housewives or something. I mean, but people will watch it because you heard so much about it and you want to be included and be a part of this. Daniel didn't want to be a part of everything. There were certain things he couldn't control. He couldn't control where he was working. He couldn't control the people that were around him. But what he could control was what he was taking in. So when we take in these things that we see in these images, whether it is coming from our visual image or the audio image, when we choose what we listen to in the forms of music, what we choose to listen to and the people that we're talking to, the kind of conversations we're having, you have control over that stuff that's coming into you. And Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with that portion. What portion are you that you are making the stand that you won't defile yourself with? Or have you just taken it all in just like everybody else?
Drugs, not wearing our masks, our gloves right now. Like
That is a very real world thing right there that we see these. We got people protesting that it blows my mind. It literally blows my mind. We got a president who didn't want to acknowledge this disease, but finally does acknowledge it and issues guidelines that everybody is supposed to follow: shelter in place, wearing gloves, closing down businesses. And now he's encouraging people to violate the same ordinances that he put in place. Mm-hmm. And they're actually outside marching, talking about, we want to go back to work. We want to do this. I actually saw a sign that someone was standing up: we will sacrifice the weak to work. The weak as in weak people, weak immune systems.
Yeah, I worked downtown and they were out there picketing and protesting, and they didn't care.
That's crazy.
It blows my mind. The same people who are mad just a couple football seasons ago when you saw a football player kneel, this same president now called them sons of bitches. Mm-hmm. But now you got people who are out in the street that blocking traffic, honking horns, keeping sick people from getting into a hospital, and they are calling those same people patriots. People's lives are in jeopardy. But here again, you have the choice of what you're taking in. And a lot of times he boasted that the ratings for CNN were through the roof. And it's some people, we will say, people like me say, we're doing it for the comedic relief, until you actually get sick of it and said, I'm not watching this anymore. I am choosing no longer to allow this to come in and defile my spirit. But it's more than him. This goes on a whole different tangent. It goes on the conversations we have with our peers and family members and loved ones. The gossiping that we like to do when we trash other people behind their backs, and it's wrong because you like this person and you like hanging out with them. It's okay. It's all right if we talk about this person because the person who's doing this with me, I love them. But they're wrong. It's about the interactions we have with people that are inappropriate, whether we make these obscene jokes or we listen to the obscene jokes, or as some people say, it's just harmless flirting. No, it's not harmless flirting. This is because if you wouldn't do it when your spouse is there, then you shouldn't do it when they're not around. But that's the stuff we take in as well. This is the stuff we engage in, or we listen to our friends talk about how they cheated on their wives or their husband, or we're listening to this person talking about this illicit behavior that they've engaged in and who they've done it with. We are taking all of this in, and you have a choice. Because this is not God-like. If you really believe that God was standing or right in the midst of the two of you when you were having this conversation, or in the midst of you engaging in this act, would you still do what you did? If you really believe that God was there. Now, we say we do as Christians. that God is there in the midst.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on this telephone, if you really believe that God was there in the midst, would he be pleased with that conversation that you're having?
Mm-hmm.
It's a question we need to answer and look at. What are we defiling ourselves with? This goes beyond food. It is not just about food.
I think the
It is.
only way we can, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was thinking the only way that, because of the way this world is, the only way that I think we can totally try to be more godly like is isolate.
Mm,
I'm serious,
mm,
because it's just this world is just horrible,
mm,
and it makes it hard. And you look back then when they saw these miracles being performed and how he had his disciples, and look how people still act. If I saw somebody do just anything, one little thing that he did, probably I wouldn't have to be, you wouldn't have to tell me that I need to act good. Shoot, I'd be scared he's gonna strike me down. Well, he could now too, but I'm just saying, sheesh, it's hard. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yep.
I agree. And I just want to add the isolation part, like Gwen said, like all of us at home now, I know my habits have changed. I'm be honest, my habits have changed now that I'm at home. There's certain stuff that I don't do. And I already told myself, when they do lift this lockdown or whatever it is, there's some things that I did before that I'm not going to do anymore. And I mean, it's not necessarily a sin, but it's just the gratefulness that I have now. I have a new look on things and a new appreciation, and just certain things in certain ways. Before we abused free will, now I'll think twice about it and, do better. But it makes a difference when you're restricted or limited. It makes you think and refocus.
Yeah, and we see what we can do without.
Yes.
I have said on more than one occasion that this shelter in place is probably causing a lot of people to reevaluate every aspect of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, it should be, because we're in a time, just like you said, Judy, we take so many things for granted. I mean, it's just, when they first went to shelter in place, I asked some people on Facebook, where's the first place you're going to go when this is over? And everybody's talking about all the places they're going. Some people lied and said they were going to church. And that is a lie. They're not going to church. But for me, I wanted to go. I told my wife, first place I want to go is New Orleans. And it's not like it's my favorite place. There are other places that I would consider my favorite, but I definitely want to go back to New Orleans, drink all day, and eat beignets all night. I'm just being honest about it. But that was just thinking we were only going to be locked up for 2 to 3 weeks. But after all this time, having people who I personally know be afflicted with COVID-19, people that I love that tested positive, it has changed the entire perspective. I don't care about going to New Orleans or eating beignets or drinking hurricanes all day. I told a coworker of mine, he said, so what are you going to do when this is over? I said, I'm going to hug my mother and my father.
Yeah.
That I was going to go hug my daddy.
Yeah.
Somebody come hug me.
Juju,
Okay.
you on the list too. We go hug you.
We'll come hug you, Judy.
It's just I said, and as soon as I leave my mama and daddy's house, I'm going to grab my grandson and just squeeze him as hard as I can without hurting him.
Oh.
My kids thought I was crazy because I texted 3 of them and told them that I can't wait to see them and hug them.
Oh.
It's just a whole different perspective, because when you realize that we could have gone into our homes and come out and never see some people we love again.
That's right.
And so when you start talking about reevaluating things, the things that you take for granted, just automatically know, hey, I'm going to see them again next weekend, or we got a plan, I'll be at my grandson's birthday party, so I'll get to see everybody then. He's not going to have a birthday party on his birthday. You know, I mean, I'm sure my daughter is probably going to end up doing something different, but the point of the matter is this real soul searching thing. What really is important in life is what we should be looking towards. And when you look at this through the book of Daniel, it really does give you some perspective on, here's a man in a situation that he had no control over, in a strange place with a strange king, with a whole different culture and a whole different way of beliefs and doing things, but yet he still held true to his God. And it took us to be quarantined and sheltered in place to really say, this is really important. No, these things are more important, and the things that I thought were important aren't so important anymore.
True. And
You
I
know?
have more money in my bank account.
Don't we all? Doesn't it just blow your mind? How much money? I mean, it's crazy. I was telling my wife, I said, we have spent more money on groceries this period of time that I think we've ever spent in our married life, and yet we're spending less money than we did before.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back up to
and that's why, this is Kimiko, that's why I haven't been too vocal. I just literally walked in from the grocery store. I've been at the grocery store, so I was on mute. So yeah, I agree. I have done more grocery shopping, and I love to cook, and I'm always cooking and always at the grocery store, but I've done more grocery shopping in these 5 weeks than I can remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And Gwen brought up some of the things that you realize you can do without. I mean, you think about some of the people that you haven't seen and probably haven't spoken to, that before you just really thought you needed to be around them all the time. It was like, I'm just good. You know, I'm good.
Like my coworkers.
Say that again.
Like my coworkers.
Yeah. It gets that way sometimes. But let's go back up to verse 2, because I don't want to miss this. When we read verse 2, said, and the Lord, I kind of glossed over this earlier, but this is an important thing. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, his being Nebuchadnezzar, that God gave the king of his people over to Nebuchadnezzar. How significant is that? Along with some of the articles of the house of God.
But it's the God with the small g.
No. It says, and the Lord gave.
Oh, up here. Okay, sorry. I was looking at the end. Yeah.
And the Lord gave the king of Judah into his hand with some of the articles of the house of God, which he, Nebuchadnezzar, carried into the land of Shinar to the house of Nebuchadnezzar's God. And he brought the articles into the treasure of his God. But the fact of the matter, God gave Judah to Nebuchadnezzar.
Wait.
Yeah.
What?
Well, you were trying to listen to what Chantel was saying?
No, I thought you said Judah was Nebuchadnezzar.
No. Judah was part of the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom was split into two. Israel was split into two kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And Judah was someone's name, but ended up being named part of the kingdom of Israel. So Judah, for this purposes, is just like a country, a separate country of its own, and it had its own king, just like the northern and the southern kingdoms each had their own kings. And so in Judah had their king, and their king was the first one. They said on the very first verse, Jehoiakim was the king of Judah. And it says, and the Lord gave the king of Judah into his hand, into Nebuchadnezzar's hand. Because you see, let's go back to the first verse. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. He gave them over to Nebuchadnezzar. Why might that be? My wife said to test their faithfulness.
Yes.
May I say something? It kind of reminded me of Job, basically when he was offered up to question with the devil, that Satan tried to turn him against God.
Mm.
And God said, like, had you consider my servant Job? But basically, he would just want to make a point because he knew their heart. Why? We can only speculate why God did that.
Well, no, that we know that God is if the one thing we know about God besides being merciful and gracious is that he is intentional, and this was for a purpose.
Right.
So
Absolutely, Pastor. I'd like to iterate something if I could. That is really profound when you said the Lord had given Jehoiakim and the children that were in Judea over to Nebuchadnezzar. It was for Nebuchadnezzar and his people to come into the fullness and a knowledge of who God really was. So it was really, like you said, it was intentional. Mm-hmm. God had to allow that to happen to get him to be the forefront and not Nebuchadnezzar, because he wanted to, put his big old statue up. Later on, we see that he built this big old statue and all that stuff or whatever for people to bow down to and all of that. He had to prove himself to Nebuchadnezzar. And how was he going to do that without some people there to show signs?
Wow. You said a mouthful. You might as well preach that. That was on the money. I mean, I couldn't have said that better myself. When you think about that, everything that she just said, that Nebuchadnezzar, part of it, and this was actually where I was going, the next thing, Nebuchadnezzar thought he was God. So the fact that God he's teaching Judah a lesson here. This is one of those where you get a double portion, 2 for 1 here. I'm teaching Judah a lesson, and I'm teaching Nebuchadnezzar a lesson, because what you'll find is, we'll get to this place. Nebuchadnezzar started having dreams, and he had to go to the man of God, Daniel, to let him know what those dreams were. And it was because of his behavior, his pride, his ego, his defiance, as our sermon from this past week, of believing that he was somehow bigger and more powerful than God, that God is going to show him a lesson. But it wasn't just for him. It's for Judah, it's for Nebuchadnezzar, and it's for the people who believed that Nebuchadnezzar was God. And if we look at this today, think about this. I hate to keep doing this, but it is the truth. We have a so-called leader of this nation that people look to and said that he is God's chosen vessel, right? Mm-hmm. And he has proven right now, he is showing to the world that he has no connection to the Lord God, because he is not displaying any godly characteristics. And the fact of the matter, he can't control what is going on right now. If there was a message from then and a message today, is showing that God is in control, and no matter how sovereign you think you are, how powerful you think you are, how popular, he don't care nothing about no ratings for CNN or anything else. He's going to show you that the power rests and resides only in one place, and that is with him. And that when he moves, you can't stop it. I mean, you think about this. Nebuchadnezzar walks in with his army, and he lays siege to Judah, which these people believed and knew who Judah was that they served. And he believed that he was bigger and better than Judah. And the part that I was just getting ready to go to was the fact that he took the symbols of God Jehovah to his place to prove a point. Your God is not bigger than me. He's not better than me. And I'm going to show you this by taking all the things that you value of your God and bring it to my house. For us, this is the same thing we do. You think of all the things. If you were to walk around your home right now, and I told that this Bible study I taught when I was working at Toyota, what is on display in your home that says this house is owned by Christian people?
Ooh, that's good one.
I mean, because we all got stuff in our house, right?
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything that distinguishes, if I didn't know you and I walked in your house, would I know that you are a person of faith? Or what would the message would your house convey to me? What would I see when I walk in your house to form an impression of who you are? If it matter? Let me rephrase the question this way: if somebody that didn't know you walked into your house, who would they say you serve by the way your home looks?
They would think I serve myself. I got pictures of myself all over the place.
Wow, Judy. Wow, Judy,
Be
girl,
honest.
you don't know. You just don't know how powerful that is. Lord God, that part of my sermon, this series I'm on, Legacy Killers. Ego is a legacy killer, and ego is part of what ego is you valuing the people whose ego blocks their blessings is because the ego represents who they value and who they worship. And for some of us, we worship ourselves.
But I have the Lord's, the Last Supper up, and I do have my Bless This House with Love and Laughter, and I have my my little setup with my rock that you gave me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Well, there you go.
I do. I have a setup, but I'm just in general. I have a lot of pictures of me and Jasmine up, but I do. I mean, if you look, you'll see my Bible over here and this picture over there. So I'm not too vain.
Regular house. Somebody need to mute their phone because we're hearing that Mariah Carey, and I'm not a Mariah Carey fan.
That's not no Mariah Carey.
But Judy, the fact that you could admit that is a big thing. The fact that you do have some things around that represent God. My wife had just kind of whispered to me, "What does our house represent?" And the fact of the matter is, our house. I'm not going to, because I have the fake background up that you can't see, but you wouldn't say, "Oh, yeah, that's Pastor and First Lady." My house doesn't reflect that. So, when I say things, I'm not just saying it to attack you guys. Most of this stuff is directed at me. Somebody say I'm stepping on their toes. I'm stepping on my own first.
Mm-hmm.
But this man, Nebuchadnezzar, who thought he was bigger than God, has taken the treasures from God's house and putting them in the house of his God. But he recognized enough. He knew enough that even though Judah had to be taught a lesson, he knew what God represented to Judah, which is why he was able to go in there and take these things to send a message to the people that I have more powerful than your God. Your God, who you say is more all powerful, couldn't stop me. And not only could he not stop me, I'm taking the stuff from his house and taking it to my God's house. And we do that same thing. We bring the world into our homes. We bring the world into our relationships. We bring the world into every aspect of our life. And we let go of everything that God has placed there for us. All of the peace that God has given us, we have let go because we put the world in. All of the joy that God had given us, we let that go because we keep taking more and more of the world. It is literally the world is depositing. It's taking all this stuff and taking up all the room from God. And here again, then we go right back to that place in verse 8. It said, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacy." I don't want the world's stuff in my house, is what Daniel is essentially saying. Can we say that as believers of God? that I no longer want the world's stuff that I have control over in this temple. Because isn't it what Paul said, that your body is a temple? That we were bought for and paid with a price. And
Yeah.
yet we have the audacity to let go of all the stuff that God has deposited in us in order to take on the spoils of the king's delicacies, the world's delicacies in our life.
Hmm.
And this is hard for us because we have grown up in a culture that values so much of the material things, and we have spent our lives working to accumulate material things. We keep working and working harder and spending more money to accumulate. This, matter of fact, let's look at that. I'm getting ready to run over time, but this whole point of why all these states are trying to get everybody back to work is for the accumulation of stuff. The lack of value of human life and dignity over money, or being under money over human life and value and dignity. The king's delicacies is what we are keep chasing after. And we have people who are saying they are willing to die in order to take the king's delicacies. Are you willing to die for the king's delicacies, or are you willing to live a life that says, not saying you got to be poor and begging for food, but we also realize that when we get to a place that at a certain point, enough is enough, right?
Yes.
And if you look at it, like we said, during this time and have evaluated what really is important, if you can imagine Daniel and excuse me, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were all thinking that something of theirs had to be of value, that they had to hold on to something. But, I'm in this world, but I'm not of this world. Isn't that what the Bible tells us? That you live in the world, but don't be of the world?
Right.
And Daniel is giving us a real life example that you can live in this world, but you don't have to be of this world. Hold true to your values and who you are. Do not defile yourself with the delicacies of this world. Purpose in your heart, starting today, that I will no longer defile myself with the world's delicacies. It's not going to be easy. And don't believe in tomorrow when you wake up, or next week, and you find yourself thinking the same thing, and don't beat yourself up about it, because we have had a lifetime. I'm 53 years old. I had 53 years of indoctrination of what it means to be a part of this world. Some of you are older than me, some of you are younger than me, but however old you are, that's how many years you've been indoctrinated to accumulate stuff in the delicacies of this world. And it's not something you're going to be able to get rid of overnight, but you can purpose in your heart to no longer take that on. The title of this chapter in my Bible that I'm looking at on screen says, Daniel and his friends obey God. That's the theme that they're trying to get across in this first chapter to us: obedience to God. In spite of what the world is offering, obedience to God. I'm going to go ahead and end now so you guys can get on with your evening and I can wind down myself. But you have to purpose in your heart to obey God, to not take on any more of the world's delicacies, and just stay true to who you are.
Yes.
Any closing comments?
I just want to tell everybody that I love them. Lisa, I'm going to be waiting on my hug. And Papa Thomas, it was so good to hear your voice. I miss you guys so much. I really do. And the Bible study and the Sunday is just, I'm really depending on that. I'm leaning on it. And I appreciate everybody.
Much love to you, babe.
You guys take care.
Miss you too, Judy.
Isaac, yeah. Sherelle.
And Lisa, I'm waiting for a hug too. I'm anxiously waiting.
Who is that?
Yeah,
Who?
that's
Isaac.
This
Isaac
is
talking
Isaac.
to Lisa.
Okay, good night,
Lisa
everyone.
would know that was Isaac.
Well, no, we got to
Good
pray
night,
first.
guys.
But Sherelle, did you have anything you want to say?
I just want to say that, I'm enjoying this time because, I always have been yearning to participate in Bible study and service with you guys, and I haven't missed a week in the last 3 weeks, and it's just been continuously feeding my soul, and it's just been just as if I was able to come down there and be with you guys. So I just want to thank you for having me, and now that my friend was the one that's staying here with me right now, she's the one that spoke, and she's enjoying it too. She's been right along with me, and just doing what we need to do to just stay positive in this time.
Amen. Amen. So does anybody want to pray us out? Excuse me?
Hey, can you do me a huge favor?
Yes, sir.
Can you send my love to Uncle Joe for me?
Of course. Gwen, you got that? Because she'll be the one to talk to him.
I've got a lot of love to send to him.
All right.
So, yes, for sure.
Does
Thank you,
anybody want
Auntie.
to pray us out?
My friend said she'll pray us out.
All right.
All right, I'm going to say good night first. Father God, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to come before you and to partake in your word, Lord. We just thank you for the meat of your word. We thank you for the revelation knowledge that we received today. Lord, help us to be more faithful and diligent in showing you to unbelievers in this world today, Father God. This is what we need to get to, is that we will be more like Daniel, more like Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, and we will stand flat-footed in the face of the devil and tell him, I will not take your portion. I will stand sure on the word of God. In the name of Jesus, we thank you. We ask that as we leave each other spiritually, Lord, that we will be connected and we will stay connected to you through the word and through prayer. In Jesus' name, we thank you so much, Father. Amen.
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 Amen. Wonderful. Well, you guys have a blessed evening. I will see you guys on Sunday and hopefully next week, as my father would say, if God's will and the creek don't rise.